In the frozen wastelands of World War II, where temperatures could turn steel into ice and skin into fire, survival wasn't about strength. It was about cleverness. Frostbite didn't just threaten comfort. It took lives, crippled armies, and ended campaigns. Yet out of that bitter cold came one of the simplest and most effective survival hacks ever devised. A trick that saved thousands of soldiers' feet when even military engineers had no answers. It wasn't high-tech. It wasn't issued. It was a grassroots invention born out of pain, necessity, and raw ingenuity. Soldiers figured out how to beat frostbite using nothing more than paper, straw, cloth, or dried grass. A method so basic and yet so efficient that, honestly, modern gear still hasn't truly improved on it. On the Eastern Front, in the Ardennes, and across the mountains of Finland, frostbite was an invisible enemy. Temperatures plunged below freezing for weeks, boots turned stiff as boards and socks froze solid overnight. Marching became torture. The US Army, the Soviets and the British all fought the same losing battle against the cold. Supplies were thin, waterproof boots were rare, and medical teams were overwhelmed, treating trench foot gangrene and frostbite. So soldiers started to improvise. They began lining their boots with whatever they could find. Pages from newspapers, handfuls of straw from barns, shreds of cloth from torn uniforms. At first it might have looked like desperation, but honestly, it was genius in disguise. By creating thin layers of material inside the boot, they unknowingly built a natural insulation system based on one of physics' simplest truths. Trapped air keeps you warm. Air, when contained in small pockets, slows the transfer of heat. These makeshift liners acted like primitive versions of the thermal insoles we buy today. When packed just right, not too tight, not too loose, the material created tiny air chambers that trapped warmth from the foot and kept out the cold. Soldiers who used the trick found they could march longer, sleep better, and, well, keep their feet intact, while others were being carried off the line with frostbite. Field accounts from the Battle of the Bulge and the Siege of Stalingrad tell of men who wrapped their feet in newspaper before slipping into their boots, or packed dry straw between layers of socks. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked, and sometimes that made the difference between walking and amputation. So, to understand why this hack was so powerful, you really have to look at the science of heat loss. The human body loses warmth through three main processes: conduction, which is direct contact with cold surfaces; convection, that's cold air moving around you; and evaporation, when sweat cools and even freezes. Now, boots in the war, they were leather, often unlined and unsealed, and, well, they got wet pretty quickly. Once that moisture got in, honestly, the heat escaped in just minutes. The added natural layer acted as both a sponge and an insulator, soaking up moisture while keeping a cushion of warm air around the foot. It was, in effect, a kind of miniature climate control system, powered by nothing but pure resourcefulness. And, you know, the real brilliance wasn't in the materials themselves. It was in the mindset. Soldiers didn't need advanced polymers or any high-tech fabrics. What they needed was warmth. Old newspapers became foot wraps. Dried grass became padding, torn shirts became liners, even spare rags, twisted around the ankle, helped lock in heat. Funny how necessity brings out that kind of ingenuity, isn't it? After the war, the method didn't disappear. It showed up in post-war survival manuals used by hunters, explorers and mountaineers. The advice remained the same. If you're caught in extreme cold without proper gear, insulate with natural materials that trap air and wick moisture. It's still taught by survivalists today, proof that good ideas never die. The soldiers who marched through Stalingrad, Bastogne and Karelia weren't just fighting armies. They were fighting nature itself. At the Battle of the Bulge, 1944, the temperature dropped below -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Ammunition froze. Fuel turned to gel. Food was solid ice. But the men who remembered to line their boots, who took a few minutes to wrap their feet in dry cloth or straw, often made it through. They didn't win comfort. They won survival. Even modern military boots owe something to that improvisation. The famous Mickey Mouse boots and cold weather liners of the 1950s borrowed the same principle: create air layers, block moisture, retain heat. Technology may have refined the materials, but the physics hasn't changed. And here's the twist. Natural materials still outperform many synthetics in real survival conditions. Straw and paper breathe better and wick moisture faster than many modern foams. They can be replaced easily, dried quickly and adjusted on the fly. Synthetic inserts, once soaked, are dead weight until completely dry. Not exactly ideal in a snowstorm. What soldiers discovered by accident in the Second World War remains, in many ways, unbeatable in the field. Today, you don't have to be in a war zone to appreciate it. Hikers, campers, and anyone working outdoors in the cold can still use the same principle. If you're ever caught unprepared, grab some dry paper, leaves or cloth, wrap your feet and trap that precious air. It might not look high-tech, but it could save your toes from frostbite. Ultimately, the World War II boot hack isn't just a survival tip. It's a story of human spirit. It's proof that when everything freezes, the mind still burns bright. These soldiers didn't wait for better gear. They became the gear. They thought, adapted and endured with nothing but willpower and a few scraps of material. So, next time you lace up your high-end winter boots, remember the men who stayed alive on frozen battlefields using nothing more than newspaper, straw and courage. It's not about what's in your boots, it's about what's in your head.